Waiting for the, we're live? There we go. Hi, everybody. It's Joe Cioffi here on this Sunday night, March 25th, 2018, coming up on 8 o'clock Eastern Time. This is going to be a very interesting live cast because we have someone on here claiming to be Joe Bastardi. So if you are Joe Bastardi, welcome and thank you for being here. If you're not Joe Bastardi and you say you're my evil twin, you're being very, very naughty. Okay, so let's move forward here. Knows a few of you, some new people on board, and it's good to see everybody. And also, we have some newcomers, regulars and newcomers here tonight. So welcome everyone. I did take a break for a couple of days. Just needed it. I took a break. When did I take my first break? So it was yesterday. And, you know, it just all is still kind of rummaging through my head in terms of what transpired last week. And now, of course, we're going to be moving forward to see where we're going with all this. And I'm seeing, it's a rather interesting pattern going into the first part of April. There's still a lot in the atmosphere going on that suggests that we're going to be seeing colder air, or at least a colder start to the month of April. I'm going to bring up the teleconnections right off the bat. And, excuse me, a couple of interesting things to note here is the fact that one of the things that we've seen through a good chunk of this winter, not all the way through, oh, you're Joe Bastardi's evil twin. Oh, okay, now I got it. Very good. I thought you were saying you were my evil twin. All right, so we are looking at the teleconnections here going forward, and the Pacific North America index remains pretty strongly negative here. So that is, we've been looking for opportunities for this index to go positive, but as you saw during the month of March, through much of the storm activity that we had, the PNA was very strongly negative. So a strong negative PNA can have consequences for big storms in the east under certain conditions. The NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, is going to take a brief dip into negative territory at the over Easter weekend. And through all of this, we've got the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation, really going strongly negative into the first couple of days of April. So this kind of is signaling a colder than average temperature pattern, but one where weather systems will probably be moving along with a lack of blocking this time going into the month of April. I would think that if you are going to have some kind of storm that's going to produce snow in coastal areas of the Northeast and down into the mid-Atlantic states, so you're going to have that blocking signature, and I don't see it. Obviously, with these signals here, with the NAO forecast to go negative and then pop back up to slightly positive. But you know what? This changes from day to day, and we're going to keep an open mind on things. Given that the month of March was so crazy, I really don't want to be in any position to rule anything out. One of the things we can say, at least for this week coming up, is that I don't see any major storms on the horizon, which is good. It looks like the weather is going to calm down, relatively speaking. I'm going to just try to shorten this up a little bit. See if I can just make it a little bit, squeeze it back a little bit better into the frame. See how that works. Not too well. Let me try one more thing. I want to get everything, including Florida. All right, that works a bit better. Okay, so why don't we bring up the full U.S. view, and we'll show you what's going on. I think we'll start with we'll bring up the upper air pattern going into this week. And there you have it. Okay, so we have a gale center, actually. Let me roll back. We do have this upper air disturbance that is dropping off the New England coast, and that is creating a strong gale center out in the Atlantic that's going to sit there. And by being out there in that position and holding firm south of Nova Scotia, northeast of Bermuda, it allows a ridge to try to build along the east coast. And you can see it here. There's an upper high in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico that kind of pushes its way up. And then you've got a ridge off the west coast and some troughing that comes in to the northern plain. So eventually that ridge is going to move out and troughing takes over in the east. And this is now going into Easter weekend. And that's a fairly deep flow that's setting up out of Canada. That's going to bring down colder air, no question. It also, judging from the upper air pattern overall, the way I'm looking at it, it really doesn't speak to any major storms here. It is going to probably mean for just weather fronts to move through from time to time. And as we look at the GFS this evening, we have this high up in Quebec. There's some, colder air has been dominating the east coast weather today. We even had some snow showers this morning, and in some places they had the ground whitened up. Now here's the next storm system coming into southwest Kansas is where the low center is, and we're going to see some rain across Kansas and up through northern half of Arkansas, southwestern Missouri, with snow in the northern Rockies and the northern plains, and that eventually is going to find its way northeast, where it doesn't look like it really develops very much. Might see some thunderstorms here late Monday night in the parts of the southern plains. It looks like they fire up pretty sharply here on Tuesday as a weather front starts to push into the east. Now, that gale center, by the way, is just on the edge of your screen here. Meanwhile, in the west, really not too much is happening along the west coast this week. After a stormy week last week, things are going to calm down a bit. But Wednesday looks like we'll probably have some hefty showers and storms running from southern Kentucky down into northeastern Texas. And then eventually we're going to get a wave that's going to develop, and there's a deepening low that runs up into western New York with a cold front. And by the end of the week, we'll get into some showers, and then you can start to see these little pushes of colder air coming into the east for next week after Easter. And then another high comes down with another shot of cold air. But, on the whole, we don't really see all that much from the standpoint of the overall pattern. It was bound to quiet down. I mean, you put 4 nor'easters on the table in 2.5 weeks, and plus the fact that, hey, we're going into the end of March now, beginning of April. I mean, this has got to end eventually. Quite frankly, it can't end soon enough for me. I'm really, just beat with regards to all of this. I'm tired, and I want to just get this over with. I'm going to see if I can. I'm having some problems here. Hang on one second. Why can I not find? I want to switch over to Europe, and I can't seem to do that. So let's let me see if I change this. All right. Yep. Problem solved. We can go to Europe now and take a look at what's happening across the pond. Looks like, not very much seems to be happening this week. We've got waves of rain. If you notice here, by Monday night, there's low pressure between Greenland and Ireland here. That's going to swing some rain through. And actually, I just realized, hang on, let me just back this up before I keep going. Got to make sure I got the right map up. There you go. So, there's your, wave of rain that comes in, a little bit of snow up in northern Scotland. And as we move into Wednesday, it looks like there's some colder air and even some snow showers being indicated over parts of Ireland and England. Kind of interested here as we go into the Easter weekend, because there is a rather strong storm that's being indicated Easter Sunday night, sitting well off the coast of France, northwest of Portugal, but you are, bringing some heavy rains into southern Ireland here, along with some strong winds. That gale center moves up northward to the south shore of Ireland by Monday morning. It doesn't look like it's the last few runs of the GFS don't seem to be as cold. There were indications back a few days ago that perhaps it'll be a shot of colder air was going to come in and maybe create a chance for some snow Easter weekend across the British Isles. But the model seems to be leaning away from this because of the fact that it's developing this rather intense little low that is going to run up into Ireland along about on Easter Monday and just basically sit there for a couple of days. So that's a pretty formidable looking storm here that models seem to be focusing on for arriving Easter Sunday night and lasting through the first part of the following week. So we're going to keep our eyes on this and see what that means in terms of the day-to-day weather. It certainly looks like what could be a big rain and possibly a big wind event. But let's get closer to it, see what we can focus on. In the meantime, much of this week doesn't appear all that ominous. Meanwhile, I just want to come back to the U.S. and show you the upper flow across North America and how it's going to be going into this cold pattern when we start the month of April. So there's your ridge in the east. And you'll notice what happens across the polar regions where you see the browns near the top of the picture over Greenland and across the polar regions back through Alaska. You're going to have higher than normal pressures building there, kind of a blocky look to it. But the strongest part of the largest anomaly in terms of the pressure changes will be in Alaska and over the Bering Sea. And as a result, you get this vortex that kind of gets trapped down in Hudson Bay. And this creates a cold flow of air into at least the eastern part of the United States, and it actually keeps Canada rather cold through the period. We'll go to the temperature anomalies here. I think that probably displays it pretty well. Let me just back away. We're going to go back to Friday of this week and start there. We'll put the 2-meter temperature anomalies here. And you can see this large area of blue and purple in Canada. That is going to be coming southward ahead of a cold front. Now, on Friday, we do have a front that will be coming through, so it'll try to warm up ahead of that. Shot of cooler air for Saturday, but the real shot is going to come later Easter Sunday and Sunday night as a cold front plays through. And then you can see how much of the eastern part of the United States, basically everywhere east of the Rockies, except for Florida, everywhere east of the Rockies, and all of western and central Canada underneath below or much below average temperatures. And that just continues right through the first week of April. And now we're into April 7th and 8th. It's after that temperatures, at least according to the world of GFS, they want to moderate as we get late into the long-range period. I think we're going to get that first week of April is going to be colder than average. Whether it goes beyond that or not, the European model in the long range was arguing for a very cold month of April ahead. The GFS seems to be at least acknowledging that the first part of the month is going to be that way, but that the second part of the month is going to be a bit different. So we'll just see where the models take us. The pattern has been so crazy during this month of March. I really don't want to. I really don't want to rule out anything. That there might not be one last gasp of winter weather in terms of snow here in the eastern part of the United States. Many areas in the Northeast, including my own, experiencing record snowfall for the month of March, monthly records being set in some places, all-time snowiest month records going down as well. So this has been a rather remarkable month, and certainly these storms have played out in just fascinating ways. But now we're going into the spring. You get a lot of volatility. You're going to start talking about getting into severe weather season soon. So we'll be shifting things around here in terms of some of the weather maps and so on, so we can start looking at the possibilities of severe weather going forward. And this is actually a bit of a rest time for me. Once we get the last possibility of any kind of snow event out of the way, it gives me a chance to take a break before hurricane season gets going, and we got time before that happens. So let me just come back to you guys and quick hello to everybody. Those of you who have come on late, Even Joe Bastardi's evil twin, Peter Bicker, the Euro model, has not done well this winter. That is quite true. And in particular, it did not do very well at all with this storm we just had. The European model continues, at least with the standpoint of how it's handling systems in the eastern part of the United States, has been, exceptionally poor this winter, and no sign of that trend breaking down anytime soon. And Shelly Man Studios, the NAM, has done quite well overall. Hasn't been perfect though. It had some, I think it had some issues in the event we just went through, especially when it comes to moving things around in the short term about where the max precip was going to be and how things were going to play out. But you know what? It's a tool, and it's not supposed to be Bible. So as a tool, I think it worked. It worked rather well once you figured out where it was going to be wrong. And March box 25, box 50S, is that, or 505? I got to get new glasses. Box 505. March will finish colder than February again this year. Yeah, February was a warm month, and March is going to be below average in temperature and way above average in snowfall. David Fuller, you want to know how much I have left of my snowfall? Well, today there's still in shaded areas. There's still snow cover of a few inches. In areas where there's full sun, or at least sun for a good portion of the day, much of the snow is gone. And of course, you have those ski resorts piles that are still up in shopping mall and supermarket parking lots. I think those are going to be around for the next couple of weeks until we can get a couple of 70-degree days to melt that along. And William Huber, yeah, I also had over 70 inches, 70.4. I think this is the fifth snowiest winter for me in the last 31 years. And it, what was the other thing, the other stat? I think it might be, I have to go back and look. But I've had 35 inches of snow this month, and if it's not the snowiest March, certainly in the last 30 years, it's got to be number two. I'm thinking this is the snowiest March that I've ever experienced here in central Long Island. Just has been an amazing year. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this stat the other day, but with respect to New York City, which is also running through its sixth consecutive above average season in terms of snowfall, that when you measure this in decades using, I don't know why the Weather Service did this, but they used the 0 year as the first year. So in other words, 2010 ending, the decade would end in 2019, even though you're really supposed to go 11 to 2020. But you know what? That's another argument for another day. I'm going to just tell you from how they counted it. Being the first year of the decade as the 0 year, and the last year will be the year ending in 9. This decade for New York City is right now the second snowiest decade on record, and it only needs to pick up 12 inches of snow if we wind up getting any more in April or next winter. If we get just 12 inches of snow, it will be the snowiest decade on record, and New York City records go back to 1869. So it'll be 150 years of data that we're talking about here. That's phenomenal. And I can tell you that, I mean, here where I am, where the averages, from the last 18 years have been, well into the 40s, into the actually probably lower middle 40s, as opposed to the long-term average, which is at about 31 3/4. So that is a telling statistic. Also, I did a little quick math in my head in that, if New York City has, let's say New York City next year has an average snowfall year, okay? When they redo the snowfall averages in 2020, when they take out the 1980s and insert the decade that we just had, the New York City snowfall average will rise from about 25 to almost 31. So that's a huge jump. The 80s and the 90s were two of the least snowiest decade on record. I think they were in the bottom. They were in the bottom 4 both of those winters in the bottom four, they're going to come out of the calculation of the average snowfall. The 80s will, the 90s will still remain, but the 80s will come out, and you're going to replace that low number with a very high number. So expect the normal snowfall averages across, certainly across the New York City area, are going to jump by big numbers when they redo the normals in 2 years or so. The snow belt of Long Island, box 505, is the area of Long Island. The Long Island Expressway cuts Long Island geographically in half from west to east. Okay, so most of the people, north of that would be referred to as North Shore, south of that, more South Shore. So the snow belt runs from about Comac, which is west of me. There's a parkway. If you get the map with the highways, it's probably easiest to look at it that way. But there's the Sunken Meadow Parkway goes up from the Long Island Expressway up to Sunken Meadow Park. And that would mark the western boundary of what I would call the Long Island Snowbelt. You might even extend it back a little bit further west than that into the town of Huntington, because they tend to get a lot of snow up there. It's very hilly. But basically from Comac eastward through Smithtown, the northern areas of Brookhaven Town going east out to about maybe just west of, maybe around Wading River, or maybe just west of Riverhead, somewhere in there. I think that area gets more snow for a number of reasons than areas on the South Shore, than areas on the East End, and areas in Nassau County. There's Long Island Sound creates a bit of a sound effect depending on the wind direction. The snow amounts from me to where I live 2 miles from MacArthur Airport, the differences in the snowfalls in most storms between the two of us is actually pretty significant, especially in cases with warm fronts coming up. They tend to get hung up just south of me for sometimes for as much as a couple of hours, which can give me an extra few inches of snow in many cases. So there's your snow belt, and anybody who lives out here and forecasts out here knows it all too well. Yeah, Wayne asks, Long Island snowfall so far for the winter of 17-18 is 50.7 inches, eclipsing the 42.1 in 16-17. Okay, do we know whether the last storm was counted in that or not? Okay, because I don't know that it is. MacArthur's at 64, I believe. They were 46 inches going back. So you might not have, Brookhaven, the number you have there, Wayne S., may not have the snowfall here in the snowfall from the other day in that number. Okay, I don't know. I'd have to. I'm just checking. I could maybe do it off camera here. Let's see if I can find it. Pull it up. They're usually pretty good about updating their snow totals. Okay. Bear with me, folks. I'm just going to see if I can pull this up really fast. Whoops. Let me see if they updated it. Okay, this map I have is not 17-18. I don't have a March number in here yet. They were 29.9 going into the month. So I'm thinking it's quite possible that 50 includes the Wednesday system. And the reason why I'm so much higher is that in the 2 events prior to this, I was in one of those bands that got the heavier snow over me, and there were areas on either side of that band that got much less. So it's quite possible that, believe it or not, that there could be as much as a 20-inch difference over the course of an entire winter from Brookhaven Labs, which is about, I would say it's about a little less than 20 miles east of me, maybe about 18 miles east of me. So huge weather differences between there and where I am. I actually there's more elevation around where I am, and there's a bit less elevation where Brookhaven Lab is. So that does have some impact. Okay, so you're saying that, all right, so it looks like it does have it in there. Okay, but you can see the difference there, even at Brookhaven with the just under 51 inches for the season. Islip is 2 miles southwest of me. They've got 64 inches for the season, and I'm sitting here with a shade over 70. It's amazing the differences that occur here and over the course of an average winter. Just pretty astounding. Just trying to see any more. Timothy Veltman, does it have to do with the topography of Connecticut? Actually, if you look at a map, if you look at the maps of the average snowfalls for the state of Connecticut, where the Connecticut River is and the Connecticut Valley that comes down, there's a snow hole there. Okay, believe it or not, there's a snow hole. And if you look at some of the stats overall, the average snowfalls actually drop as you go across west to east across southern Connecticut, and then they rise again in eastern Connecticut, because what happens is a lot of the times that the storms that deepen out in the ocean tend to be a little bit too far to the east, so that there's a bit of a hole that develops in some places. Also, in the case of what happened last week on Wednesday, the heavy snow bands got to over Long Island, and Connecticut's only a handful of miles from me by air. It's a little less than 20 miles from my house to Bridgeport, and those bands never made it to the South Shore of Connecticut. They just kind of hovered over Long Island. There was a band all afternoon and evening that sat in Long Island Sound that never really pushed on shore. So Connecticut got very little snow from the storm on Wednesday. Once you got east of, say, Stamford in southwestern Connecticut, and you started heading out toward New Haven and Bridgeport and New Haven, the snow decreased considerably. So there's all kinds of weird topography issues here, geographic issues, the ocean playing an effect sometimes in how these storms develop, the banding that occurs. These last couple of storms, banding was a big deal, and if you are inside those bands, you're going to get hit with some heavy snow, and if you're outside those bands, you ain't going to get very much. So anyway, we're going to leave it here tonight, folks. We are still in recovery mode, so we're going to make it short tonight. Back tomorrow at the usual time, 6 o'clock Eastern time, and the Joe and Joe show will be back on at Facebook on Monday at 9:15. Although this week Joe's taking a couple of days off at the end of the week, so I'll be solo Thursday and Friday, but we'll be doing it together Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And as I said, back for YouTube, back on the usual schedule, which is 6 o'clock Eastern time. And of course, there's always my Facebook posts on meteorologist.joecioffi.com. Angry Ben is taking care of New York City on nycweathernow.com. And if you are on Long Island, weatherlongisland.com for your Long Island weather forecasts. And of course, you can use all three anytime you like. I'll just quickly mention, by the way, that Sunday, April the 8th, I will be at the Deer Park Library on Lake Avenue in Deer Park for my next in a series of library appearances. Didn't do any during the month of March, took a bit of a breather. But I'll be back on Sunday, April 8th, and that's at 1:30 p.m. At the Deer Park Library in Deer Park, New York, on Long Island. And you can go to their website, the Deer Park Library, and register if you'd like to come. And if you don't live in the Deer Park area, you can just come and register when you arrive. So anyway, everybody have a great rest of your Sunday evening, and we will. Oh, and don't forget, by the way, my friend's show Instinct is coming on CBS in a few minutes, as soon as 60 Minutes ends. So be sure you watch it. Instinct on CBS. Have a great evening, folks, and a good week ahead. We'll see you tomorrow.